Hi everyone, and today we're going to look at storage devices and media. And this is a really sensitive topic because most of the time you get questions coming in, especially when you're talking about advantages and disadvantages of using this over the other. And in these storage devices, we're going to be looking at the magnetic, which is, we'll talk about the magnetic, we're talking about the hard disk drive. Then we're also going to talk about the magnetic tape drive as well. And we'll talk about the optical. We'll talk about the optical. We're talking about our CDs, our DVDs, and our Blu-ray, which is read and write devices as well. And we'll talk about solid state, which is our SSDs, our pen drives, and our flash drives. And those are the devices. We'll talk about the medias. We're talking about the magnetic tapes. We're talking about the disc itself, which is your CDs, your DVDs, and then we're talking about your solid state memory cards as well. Okay, so let's have fun with this. Now we'll talk about the secondary storage. We're invariably talking about that this includes non-volatile devices. What are non-volatile devices? This means that any information that is stored on them are not being lost. Okay, they are permanent memories. Okay, they are not part of the primary memory, not at all, right? So they are stored as long as the user requires it to be. Okay, and they are much larger than your RAM. They are much larger than your ROM, which are your internal memories. Okay, so we're going to look at all these devices as well. So we're going to start with the first one, right, which is us knowing our magnetic medias and our magnetic storage devices. So let's start with the magnetic tape drive. Now, the magnetic tape, right, which is what they use for cinemas, right, is a very thin stripe of plastic which is coated in a magnetic layer or iron oxide, right? They can be read from or written to by a read or write head in a magnetic tape storage device. Okay, now the data stored are stored as a magnetized area, which represent as a 1, or demagnetized, which is represented as a 0. Okay, data is read from the tape using what we call a serial access, and in other words, they can only be read in the same order that is reading. So you can't skip it. The serial is stored in the order of what as they appear. Okay, now this type of storage is useless in real time or online application due to the very slow data access speed. It's best suited to offline or batch processing. However, due to their vast storage capacity, magnetic tape are still used in large industries or even university computers. Okay, so let's look at the uses of this magnetic tape. What are the uses? Which is one of the things that you should pay attention to. They're used in applications where batch processing is used. For example, clearing checks, utility bills. Utility bills, we're talking about the gas or electric, water, production pay slips. They're used as backup medias where vast amounts of data can be stored. In cinemas, you see them in cinemas. They are used in long-term archiving of data. Okay, where you have your magnetic tape. Okay, because it had that huge data storage capacity and are known to be very stable. Okay, which make them ideal for long-term storage. Okay, let's talk about the advantages of the magnetic tape. Now, we've talked about the fact that they're used in applications for batch processing, backup medias, long-term archiving of data, and then let's talk about the advantages. Now, the advantages is that they are less expensive, right, than the equivalent of the hard disk drive. Another one is a very robust technology that they don't deteriorate over a long time and they remain stable. Okay, those informations you can keep them there and they're going to stay for a long time. And then again, another key thing about it is that they have a huge data storage capacity. Okay, then we talk about the data transfer rate. Okay, the data transfer rate is actually fast. Okay, don't confuse this with data access time, right, which is slow for magnetic, because data access is about the time taken to be able to access that data. But in terms of data transfer, it is very, very fast. Okay, disadvantages, obviously, that should let you know that they have a very slow data access time. Because why do they have a slow data access time? They make use of what we call the serial access. Okay, so that serial access simply means that all previous data needs to be read, okay, until the required data is found. Okay, so you can't skip any process. They have to be read from the very first beginning to the end. Okay, another disadvantage is when updating, okay, another thing is needed to store the final updated version. Okay, so we are updating, you need another tape to store the final update, which require the use of what we call the master tape, which is the original tape. So we have a transactional tape which contains all the changes to be made to produce a new master tape. This is clearly a slow way of updating data and can introduce errors, which is why it's magnetic. Okay, and they are affected by magnetic fields. Okay, you can see the word magnetic, and that can, a strong magnet, for example, one found in the speaker, can corrupt the data stored on the tape. So for us to be able to save, update data, all data stored in magnetic tape, a new tape produced from A and B, and the new tape could be used in the master slide. Now, just an advice, right? A data transfer rate is the rate at which data can be sent from a storage device to a computer, right? And that's why it's very fast, because the rate at which it sends it from the tape to the projector is very, very fast. But data access time, on the other hand, is the time taken to locate specific data stored on the storage media. Okay, now let's go to something that is common, your hard disk drive. Now, in your hard disk drive is still one of the most common methods used to store data on a computer. Okay, in fact, data stored in a digital format on the magnetic surface of the hard disk. Okay, so this is a good example of what I'm talking about. Now, if you look at your hard disk drive, you see that there's a CD. Now, it is stored on that magnetic surface of the hard disk, or what we call the plaster. Okay, as they're usually called. Okay, now this what happens, all informations are now being stored here. All your informations, they are now being what, stored here. Okay, now we have a hard disk drive is very often have more than one platter depending on its capacity. Okay, and a number of read and write heads can be accessed all to the platter surface. So read and write is taken off, okay, in the hard disk. Okay, now another thing is the read and write head can move very, very quickly. Okay, and the read and write head can it typically move from the center of the disk to the edge of the disk and back again. Okay, now watch this. Actuators are used to move the read or write heads. Now, this is an actuator, right? A device that helps. So it sends a signal, okay, read this to this, is going to read it, and take this off, is going to do the reverse. So we call it a voice code, and they are used as actuators, right? And they are very similar to the electromagnetic used in speakers. We have a read and write arm that reads head back and forth, and we have a lot of plasters that are made from glass to read and read heights, the tracks, the sectors in each of them. Now, another thing is the latency. Now, the effect of latency can become very, very significant. What do we mean? It defines the time it takes for a specific block on data tracks to rotate around the read or write heads. Okay, now let's look at the uses of the fixed hard disk drive. You know, we have removable, we can have it removable, we can have it fixed. Let's look at the fixed. Now, invariably for the fixed, they store the operating system, they store system software, they store working data, they can store application softwares on them. They are used in real-time systems. They can use them in robots, in CCTV cameras, etc. They're also used in Also for online system, when you're booking online airline tickets, automatic stock controls. They're also using file servers for computer networks. Now, advantages of the fixed hard disk drive. Okay, they have a very fast data transfer rate. Okay, they also have a fast access time to data. Okay, but they have also another advantage, that they have a very large memory capacity. But then again, the disadvantages of a fixed hard disk drive is they can be fairly easily damaged. For example, if the correct shutdown procedure of the computer has not been correctly carried out, it's possible to sustain a head crash. And they have many moving parts which can affect their overall reliability. Okay, talking about the moving parts in the hard disk drive that can actually affect it. Now, their read and write operations can be quite noisy when compared to solid state drive. Especially if you're copying, you're moving, you're trying to find it, you discover that noise in your system. That's because it's as much as possible the system is trying to locate it. So it's spinning and spinning, just like the same way your normal disk is going to spin when you're fast forwarding or you're rewinding. You're forwarding or you're winding, the same thing happens. Then let's look at the portable hard disk drive. Now, the portable are the ones that are removable. It simply means that you can remove them, right? It simply means that they act as an external hard drive. Okay, so let's talk about those portable ones. Okay, now, like I said, they are external to the computer. They can be connected to the computer using what we call a USB port. Okay, we see them as backup storage. So we transfer files between the computers to them. Okay, and then let's look at the uses of the portable hard disk drive. They can be used as a backup system to prevent loss of data. They can be used to transfer not just data or files or even software between computers. However, let's talk about the advantages. Now we know the uses, let's talk about the advantage, which is a key thing in storage. You need to know the uses. In fact, your focus should be on the uses, the advantages, and then disadvantages. Now, for the advantages, the access time and data transfer rate is very, very fast. They have large memory capacity. They can be used as a method of transferring information between computers. Then another one is the disadvantages. As with fixed disk drive, they can be easily damaged if the user has accidentally drops it or does not correctly shut down the drive after use. That's another thing you have to watch out for when you're talking about the portable hard disk drive or your external drive. Another one is the data transfer rate is not as fast as for the fixed drive because it takes time to load. It takes time to be able to not just load, it takes time to be able to transfer the contents of your file from your computer into the external hard drive. So you need to take note of that as well. Then let's talk about the optical media and the optical storage devices. Okay, now for the optical media and the optical storage devices, we look at CDs and DVDs. Okay, we look at CDs, look at DVDs. Now, CD simply means compact discs, right? And now they are described as optical medias. That simply means that they can be read from or written to by the optical storage devices. You need to know that. Now, optical storage devices can be built into a computer or can be connected externally via a USB cable. Now, that device is where we can put that media into it. Now, they rely on the optical properties of laser light, which is then used to read data and to write data on the surface of the disc. Okay, now for CDs and DVDs, they can be designated as ROM. That ROM simply means write once only. You're writing once. Then the RW simply means can be written to or read from many times. And when it's ROM, simply means it is only read only. You can only read the information, so you cannot write from it. You cannot edit it. That's what it means. Now, another thing we need to talk about is the uses of them, right? You can skip all those things, not needed. Let's talk about the uses. Use of the CDR and DVD-R. For CDs and DVD-Rs, which is read only once, Home recording of music and films. You can use it to record your music and films. They can use it to you can use to store data to be kept for later use or to be transferred to other computers. Now, it's a cheaper medium than the ROW discs. Also, once burned, they behave like ROM. So you need to take note of that, which is a good advantage. So when you burn in it, when you burn on it, when we talk about burn, I want to explain that. When we talk about burn, this simply means that you are copying your files and you are making it to be read only. What do I mean by this? This simply means that when you burn, let's say you're burning a movie, right? You're burning a movie into your CD or DVD. Now, the moment you burn the informations into that CD, the moment you play it, they behave like ROM. It simply means it's going to play and the files will not show. Right? It's going to play as the media. So invariably, this is what people use when they are when you go to film shops and you want to buy a movie, and the moment you put it on your DVD, your DVDs is going to play, because that simply means that when it was empty or like a plain CD, those informations are now being transferred, and watch this, they are transferred to be what? Read only. It simply means that you cannot make any modifications to it. I hope that's clear. Now, another one is can be recorded once. If error occurs, then the disc has to be what? Thrown away. Not all CDs or DVD player can read CD-RO and DVD-RO, which is actually a downside. Okay, let's talk about the uses of the ROW, which is write, read and write. Many times they are used to record television programs which can be recorded over time and time again. They are using CCTV cameras. Of course, you know CCTV cameras, they can read and overwrite. They can be used as backup device for files and also for data. Now, the ROW, now if you go to the market to buy it, we have the one for RO, we have the one for ROW. So you need to know which one you are actually purchasing for. Okay, now let's talk about the advantages. It can be written over many times, which is a very good advantage. Can use different file formats each time it is used. It's not wasteful, right? It simply means that whatever information you add, you can still add more later, unlike the CD or DVD-RO. Okay. Let's talk about disadvantage. It's expensive compared to the one that has the CD-RO. Okay, it is possible to accidentally overwrite data. Yeah, we have to look at that as a disadvantage. I know you'll be saying, but you have to be you can be careful. But sometimes we do it, right? We overwrite data without even knowing, and we have to factor that in as a disadvantage. Okay, all right. Let's talk about the ROM. Right, the CD-ROM and DVD-ROM. Now, this simply means that they are read-only memory, which means they cannot be written over but can only be read. They are a permanent method of data storage, right? They are used to store music files, store software, store games, reference softwares, right? They have a much larger storage, and you can use it to store films. But now it's increasing use to store computer data and even more games, right? And that's why if you go to your game stores, in the CD you see, those CDs are called CD-ROMs or DVD-ROMs because they are used to store only that game. And that's why when you put it on your PlayStations, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, the more you put that CD in, is going to play. Okay, because those informations have been sent, they are just read only. You cannot alter the content of those informations. Now let's talk about the advantages real quick. Since we have looked about the uses where they are using applications, that is it prevents deletion or variety of important data. Now, advantage is less expensive. Now, it is less expensive than your hard disk drive system. Now, usually you might be asked to talk about the advantages and disadvantages in your IGCSE advantages and disadvantages of using the CD-ROM or DVD-ROM over your hard disk. Questions like that can come out. Now, when questions like that come out, how do you answer it? You need to know what they are. And for now, when you know what they are, then it gives you an idea to be able to find answers to such questions. Okay. Now, the next one is disadvantages. Now, the data transfer rate is much slower for hard disks. Okay, they're much slower for hard disks. Okay, now so that on that advantages, right? It's more slower than for hard disk, so it's slower. It's a slow process, right? Because for you to actually transfer or to access, it takes quite a time. Okay, now let's talk about the Blu-ray. Now, the Blu-ray is another example of optical storage media, right? They are fundamentally different to DVDs in their constructions. What do I mean? Now, for Blu-ray, right? Let's just quickly go to the uses and then we'll see what they do. Now, let's look at let's talk about the comparison between DVDs and Blu-rays. Now, a single standard layer DVD has a storage capacity of, let's say, 4.7 gig, enough to store a 2 hours standard definition films. But for Blu-rays, they have more storage definition because they're used to store high definitions. Now, I'm going to talk about the difference between SD and HD. Now, if you're watching a movie, right, we have movies in different definitions. We have movies, if you're streaming, probably if you're streaming or watching a movie, you've probably noticed this, right? Especially when you are streaming. You see that in streaming we have SD and we have HD. SD talks about standard definition. It brings the movie to a standard layer, a standard level that irrespective of your network, you should be able to, at the very least, watch it comfortably. But for high definitions, these are it takes a lot of storage devices, right? And to store a high definition, you need to have at least a storage capacity of at least 27 gig. Okay, that's for a single layer. Now, for a dual layer, right, it has up to what, 50 gig, which is what enough to store 4.5 hours of high definition movies, or even 20 hours of standard definition movies. Okay, now for Blu-rays, they have better interactivity than the DVD devices. Now let's look at it. Now for the Blu-rays, it is possible to record high definition television programs. That's one. Two, you can skip quickly to any part of the disc. Okay. The third one is you can create playlists of recorded movies and television programs. Now, you can edit and reorder the program on the disc because it has a lot of it, right? You can search for an empty space on the disc to avoid over recording, right? You can access websites, download subtitles, and other interactive features. Now, let's talk about Blue for DVD is red. Okay, uses. We use it for home video consoles, storing and playing back movies. You can use this to store can use as a backup hard drive. They are used as camcorders. They use these media to store movies. Okay. Okay. Advantages of the Blu-ray. Okay. Let's talk about the advantage of the Blu-ray. Let's talk about for the advantages, we have a very large storage capacity. Right? Very large storage capacity talks about it is ideal for storing high definition movies. It has a very fast data transfer rate. Okay, so you have to look at that. The data access speed is also greater than with other optical medias, and it also comes with a secure encryption system which helps to provide piracy and copyright infringement. Then disadvantages is, what comes to mind is it's very expensive, and very expensive this compared to other ones. Encryption problem, right? Which is used to stop piracy, of course, when you store videos. So obviously, if is that encryption problem could be disadvantages, obviously you have to decrypt it to be able to do that. And of course, introduction of the HDs, right? DVD players has reduced the advantages of using Blu-ray what technology. So you have to also look at it. But one good disadvantage is that it's a relatively expensive text. So what have we looked at in this course? We've looked at we started with the hard disk, right? Which is more importantly, we started with the magnetic tape drive. We looked at the uses where they are being used at using application for batch processing, backup media, long-term archiving. We talked about the advantages and disadvantages. Went for talk about the hard disk drive as much as possible. Talked about the actuator which is used to read and write here. Then we also talked about the portable hard drive, which is like your external hard drive. We talked about the optical media. We talked about the CDs. We talked about the CD arrow, which is CD read, and which means you are writing only once, and that we use it for burning. We talked about the CD or DVD ROW, which can be written to or read for many times. Then we also looked at the Blu-ray as much as possible, and we can see that the Blu-ray has a very high technology. More importantly, we're able to compare with the DVDs to see which one stores for standard and of course for high definitions as much as possible. We also looked at the uses they are which are used for camcorders, homes, video consoles, okay, playing back movies. We looked at the advantages and disadvantages. We said it has a very large storage capacity, and then for its advantages, it's a relatively expensive disk. Okay, we're going to stop here. The part one, the part two, we're going to look at the SSD. Okay, so bye.